So now this is your famous macaroni and cheese recipe and preparation of it that people are always asking you about. Where did this recipe come from, and how long have you been making it?
Well, it came from my family, which I was born in Charleston, South Carolina, and that's birthplace of my parents and whatnot. And what they would do certain times, certain things that they would prepare for a meal, special meal like Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, what have you. And this is one of the things that they would make around Thanksgiving is, with other thing, is the macaroni and cheese that a lot of my friends whom I have met since I've grown up love and what have you.
So I mean, so who specifically gave you this recipe?
I learned from my stepmother and my aunt, and they would take turn in cooking it. One do Christmas dinner, then the other would do Easter dinner, and you learn from them because they bring you right into the kitchen and have you help with the food, the children that is, and even though sometimes you want to play a game, you're going to help because you need to learn how to cook, whatnot.
So you've been making this recipe for a long time, huh?
Well, I've been making it since I got married because after I got married, then I then was responsible for my own cooking. But I learned to cook a lot of things with my mother, which is my stepmother. I keep referring to my stepmother, which it is because she raised me since I was 12 years old after my mother died and whatnot.
So you brought this from Charleston, South Carolina. You brought it from, well, I guess you brought it from Charleston to New York, now to Orlando,
Now I'm
Florida.
going to correct you. I was born in Charleston, but my parents moved to New York when I was 10 years old.
Okay.
And so, and my parents, my mother, my aunt, and other relatives in New York brought some of the traditional food that they prepared when they were coming up in Charleston.
So then you did that for decades in New York, and now you brought it to Orlando,
And I
Florida.
brought it to Orlando, Florida, yeah.
Okay, so people want to know. So what are the ingredients that go into this macaroni and cheese?
Well, the first thing is macaroni. Of course, today they call it pasta. But my family used the elbow macaroni, which some people will use a different kind. Butter or margarine, paprika, salt, black pepper, 3.5 cups of milk, 3 cups of shredded cheese, and there was eggs, 2 eggs, a half a cup of breadcrumb, which is used for the last minute before you put it into the oven, and dry mustard, finely chopped white onions, about a half a teaspoon. If you don't have fresh onion, you could use the onion flakes. And the other thing is cooking oil. And the reason why they use cooking oil is to put the cooking oil, which right now I have the water about to boil because we're going to parboil the macaroni. And you put about 2 tablespoons of water into the water. So when you put the macaroni in, you stir it so that it gets coated so that it doesn't stick together. And while it's cooking, which you should follow the direction on the package to cook the pasta. Each pasta is cooked at a different time, a different way. And then it's like not really cooked soft, but it should be what they say, la dente, if I'm saying it correctly. And you have butter. And did I leave out anything?
So now, how long does it? I mean, total time to prepare it from from gathering your ingredients to the time that you pull it out of the oven? If you're doing it all in one sitting, I mean, how long does that generally take?
Well, I work like this. I usually prepare all my ingredients before I start cooking. In the meantime, I have my water boiling, so like this saves time. And it should be like a large pot, like holding at least 2 to 3 quarts of water. And I have all my ingredients here now. So I have the macaroni, the cheese, which is grated
And did you say, what is it, cheddar cheese, did you say?
Yeah, you can use cheddar cheese is the basic. I use cheddar cheese, and I use a sharp cheese, and I use a mild one. And then sometimes, depending, I might use the cheddar cheese and another cheese just to give it a variation. And I have here the pasta, which I already have measured out as 2 cups of pasta. And I have the cheese, which is 2.5 cups of cheese. Here I have the pepper and dry mustard, which is something that a lot of people are not really familiar with. And aside from that, I also use 2 eggs, which some people are amazed to know that I put eggs in it. And yet I ran into a few other people who are not from Charleston and they use eggs. Some people have a tendency to put flour in it. My daughter says, the first time she ate that, she wanted to scream.
So, and one of the things that's really great, I guess we'll see it in the final product, is just like, you just get this kind of a crust that's just like unbelievable.
Okay,
you know?
and I'll tell you, that's why I told you, when I measure out the cheese, usually I keep about a 1/2 cup and I set that aside. And I have a little breadcrumb, which that is set aside. So after you put the ingredients into the bowl, which I'll explain to you, dish or bowl, whatever it is, you then will put the cheese on top, and lightly, not a whole lot, lightly, and then you put the, pardon me, in reverse. You put the cheese on top, then you put the breadcrumb on top. Just sprinkle over lightly, what have you, and a little paprika and a pat of butter here and there. And that's where you get the crispy from on top of the macaroni and cheese. All right, I've added 2 tablespoons of water, oil to the boiling water.
Now, why'd you do that?
I did that because I'm going to put the pasta in, and when I put it in, I'm going to stir it so it coats the pasta so it does not stick.
Oh, okay.
Because if not, it will stick. And occasionally, while it's boiling, I will stir it from time to time. And the other thing about it is to make sure that the pasta cooks in roughly 10 minutes. I just finished boiling my pasta, which it took roughly about 12 minutes. And I'm now drained it, and now I'm going to add the butter. And the reason why I'm adding the butter, because again, I'm coating the pasta so that it does not stick together. And I'm stirring in the butter so it's melted and it goes all through the pasta.
Okay.
And after I add the pasta, I'm going to add my dry ingredients, which consist of the mustard and dry and black pepper, and put that in, and I'm mixing that in so that goes all through the okay. And I don't put salt in. The reason why I don't add salt, because of the cheese. The cheese has a lot of salt, and I'm using a very sharp cheddar, and I use the mild cheddar. I mix the 2 together. And sometimes I may use a different colored cheddar, but this is all yellow cheddar that I'm using right now. And aside from that now, I'm now going to add my cheese in. And I'm adding it a little at a time so that it gets well blended into the pasta. And now that I have all that in, I'm now going to add my milk.
And how much milk is that again?
This is 2.5 cups of milk.
Okay.
No. Correct myself. Yeah, 2.5 cups of milk. I'm now adding the eggs.
And now that's you beat the eggs, and those are 2 eggs, right?
2 eggs is I beat the eggs. That's going to be the secret of holding the macaroni and cheese together.
So the egg kind of acts like a binder?
It is a binder. With the egg and the cheese, you have the binder. You don't need to have any flour or cornstarch or anything like that.
So what are you doing now?
Now I'm putting butter in the bottom of the baking dish. And the reason why I'm doing that is because it helps to give the brown to the bottom of the macaroni and cheese also. And to that I'm going to add some paprika, which is right here.
So does that help make it the crispy, the kind of
Yeah,
crispy
because we're
crust?
trying to get a little crispiness all through the thing, and so it gives it a brown, the butter with the paprika together and whatnot. So, and now I'm going to give it another stir, and I'm going to put it into the baking dish, which is roughly 8 by 2.5 inches. Give it a nice big stir from the bottom. Everything is blended in. And I'm going to bake this in a 375 degree oven for 35 minutes. And at the last few minutes, it should have a nice brown on top. If not, just raise it up under your broiler for a few minutes and get that finished brown. Nice, beautiful brown. And at this point, I will now add the cheese. Remember the half cup of cheese that I saved originally from the original recipe? I'm not adding it onto the top of this sparsely. We don't want it to look cakey or anything in the kind. Sparsely, I'm adding the cheese on to that, and that's going to help to give it the crust on top and a nice, beautiful brown or what have you. And onto that, I'm going to add some paprika. Also help with the browning effect. We like for our macaroni to have a nice crispy top, beautiful brown on top and what have you. And this is all going to get out. And to that, I'm going to add some breadcrumbs. That's going to really make it nice and crispy and sparsely. We don't want it covered like, you know, a cake or anything with icing or something like that. We just sparsely add that on. And that's it all come together and what have you. And to that, guess what? A little dab of butter. Here. Oh, well, my finger to help it along. Don't worry about the finger. My hands are clean. I always believe in washing my hands, so hey.
Hey, it's all in the family, right?
And as the butter melts, that also helps to get the crust going on top. And it's nice when you crunch down on that nice crispy macaroni with a nice top on it and nice and chewy, what have you. It's great. I don't want to put too much butter on it, but I just need enough so it spreads out. And now I'm going to put it into the oven. And as I said before, the oven is set at 375 degrees, and we will bake it for 35 minutes. I'm putting it on the bottom rack, and I'm going to leave it there for roughly 25 minutes, and then I will raise it up to the higher rack to finish getting the brown that I want on it.
So now you're raising it up.
Raising it up so it gets that finished brown. It's beginning to brown on the bottom, but not as quickly as I want it to. So I'm going to raise it up under the broiler for 10 minutes. There we go. You see it?
So
now it's done. There is the nice crust, nice and brown and crispy. And I just want to add that if you have a lot of cooking to do, you can prepare this up for maybe a month before you're ready to cook it. And after I prepare it, I put it into the freezer in a plastic container. And when I'm ready for it, I'll defrost it for a day or two before, and then give it a nice stir, maybe add another quarter cup of milk to it. And that day you want to cook it, just put it in the oven, and you're ready to go.